The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com. And good morning. Welcome to the Old School podcast about the American education system. Although we have been known to drift off the rails, as we will today, and with me in that endeavor is my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Mr. Miller, it's good to see you today. The holidays are technically behind us, and I've kind of
Not
gained,
a moment too soon.
yeah, I've regained my energy. I was just, what do you call it when you lack energy every day and you have to force your way through it?
Pressed?
Depressed, possibly. It sounds like it, doesn't it? But I feel like I've found my mantra again.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Yeah, so I'm back in the not the
In
south.
the saddle, right?
Okay, we'll call it that.
We'll use a Texas metaphor.
It's
So
a technical term, for sure. Um, you want to introduce our guest, who's a regular on our
he
program?
is a regular. He is really, if you think about it, he's the third
Well,
old school guy, Dr. Alex
he's
Fingers.
getting up there in age too. So, um,
Yeah, especially since the new year has just begun. So,
yeah.
good morning, everyone.
Morning, Dr. Alex Fingers. Once again, we thought the only way to start the year would be Alex, and here we are.
I appreciate you guys' welcome.
Hey.
He looks like he's not doing well, though. You ever see the old guys that are wearing tracksuits or they're wearing the jerseys of teams that used to be good? And, this looks like things have not been going well for Dr. Alex Fingers lately.
Oh,
Listen, I'll let you know at about 9:30 if your statement is true. We have a football contest, sir, you and I,
That's right.
um, tonight. So it's winner takes all. How the NFL drew it up. Not how I drew it up. I like to have won last week against a 3-win team, but nonetheless, we wouldn't have tonight to look forward to.
And for the uninitiated, and that would be Steve in this case,
what are you talking about?
there this goes beyond football. For people who do not know, there is a genuine civic rivalry between Baltimore and Pittsburgh that has covered all sorts of sporting events, sports teams, different things like that. And so this is a municipal rivalry as much as it is a team rivalry, and so it cuts across all corners, as it were.
Wow, I thought you were going to talk about that this is technically a rivalry between Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns are a different team. I don't know what you're talking about,
No,
but
there's a confusion there, but it seems like a lot of the players playing for the Ravens, if you look at their history, that you go back, they came from Cleveland. I don't know how that happened.
I think there's like two guys on the Ravens that played for Cleveland.
Okay. So we managed not to talk about the Colts for once. That's good.
The Colts.
It all fits together. But this animosity, what's the history of this between Pittsburgh and Baltimore? I really didn't know.
Well, I mean, both cities are steel cities. Both cities are working class industrial cities, and insofar as that's true, there's always been a healthy dose of economic rivalry between the two cities. Certainly, Pittsburgh is more known for steel. Baltimore more known for the docks and the ships and everything of that nature. But we've had our own steel industry in Baltimore, or used to, before everything went to hell in a handbasket. And but so it's a little bit like everyone knows I'm a soccer fan, and so like there's a big rivalry in English soccer between Sunderland and Newcastle, for example, and their rivalry goes long before there was such a thing as soccer, and it kind of makes the animosity a little extra special. And I think so is the case here between Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and my knowledge of the rivalry goes back to just the football days of the Steelers being the example of football, and Baltimore wanting to be like the example of football, building their rosters to mimic ours, and so there always will be our little brothers. Um, we play a very similar style of football,
Yep.
as you noted, tough cities and really gritty people. And so the type of football that's played between both teams are representative of those cities, and I literally look forward to these games every year. We generally split these games. If one wins the first game, we almost can bet on the next one being awarded to the other team. But this one here is for all the marbles. And as much as I like to rag Ross about Baltimore and all of the Ravens fans for that matter, there is a healthy respect for the Ravens. They play good football.
And it will all be settled as it always should be on the field of play tonight.
That's right.
Live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Well,
Isn't that how Howard Cosell used to introduce Monday Night Football? Or Al Michaels? You're looking live on Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I'm glad you didn't try to mimic the voice of Howard Cosell. I think you sounded more like a very old Jim McKay or something.
Well, this goes into the idea of, I think when I was young, my segue into sports, one had to do with the old guys in our neighborhood who also rooted for the Colts and the Orioles and what have you, but also through the collecting of sports memorabilia, mainly cards, when you're a kid. And and when you were young, is that how you got into it? Looking at the back of the card and kind of like, checking out who did what and who came from where and who went to which school and who played for what team beforehand? Or did you come by it more organically?
Well, why don't you answer that, Alex? I have my answer.
Sure.
I go way back.
Yeah, I think it was like our internet of the day. It was a way for us to talk about our teams and talk about different players within different leagues that we watched, and almost brag to our friends who collected cards as well. Now, being young and not really understanding the value of anything at that time, we played with the cards as if they were action figures,
Yeah.
So if you see any cards that I've had back in the day, they are worn and torn and look like the era from which they came. But definitely, it was just not getting enough of sports. Just couldn't get enough of it. And because we didn't have the ESPNs, as early with all of that, constant 24/7 updates and things of that nature, and handheld devices where we can look up stats right away, it was a big deal to just be able to remember certain player stats and bet quarters on whether or not you were right on different things. And so I think a lot of guys just collected it because again they love the sports that the cards came on, of course, and even more we got to know a little bit more, peek into the lives of the players who we watched and cheered for on the hardwood and the gridiron and baseball diamond, etc. And much like Instagram and all of the other social media platforms are today, where it's not enough just to watch the player during the time that they're competing. You want to know a little bit more about the player, and you follow them on these various social media platforms. So I think this was probably the beginning, the genesis of social media, if you think about it. Looking at people's desire to be more connected to these athletes, and finding ways to give that connection to the fans.
It's an interesting analogy between the idea of sports cards and the internet, because between the cards and like, at least with football, Streets and Smith, they come out with their beginning of the year kind of breakdown. it becomes not just a source of information, but it becomes a source of conversation that you had when you were trading or comparing or playing football with the cards or whatever the case may be. For you, Steve, was that a part of how you got into it, or was it something different?
I was a little bit young when I started. Somehow I inherited some pretty old cards. We're talking about 1967 to
Mhm.
1970, and that's about when I started adding to the collection. And that was by getting on my bike and riding down to the drugstore with a dime
Mm.
and buying the bubblegum cards and bringing it back. And we would,
You sound like Opie, you know.
yeah, yeah. And the gum wasn't that good. Sometimes you have a lot of doubles or triples of these players, and those are the ones you would probably trade. We had a terrible habit of writing our names on them because, when you're laying out all the cards, you don't want to have to fight for it. So you can put your name on it. Now you own it. And that's a terrible idea for the value of the card. But eventually, uh, I think there was a class project where they asked you to display one of your collections, and I immediately said, "Well, I have about 2,000 football cards," so I put them in order with dividers, and that kind of stuck. I thought it was pretty cool to see just how many you had from each of the teams. They're all represented, and at that point, it became a collection. And then I made some strategic purchases, basically trading a whole somebody's collection for something else, and not knowing at that point that that could be worth a lot of money, 50 years later or something.
Well, it's something that's it's not even part of the mindset. You're not even
No,
thinking
oh
about
no.
the cards as money. And you're talking about writing on them. There was a time where I thought that someone else needed Franco Harris, and so I would scratch out Steelers and write like another team on it on the card itself, and ruin that card for any future economic purposes. But the idea of the cards just became, like Alex said, there's an internet quality to it in the sense that it built community, and it became something to talk about, with your friends. And I was more into baseball, and so for me, the baseball thing was more important than baseball cards. But baseball and football cards was kind of like the currency of childhood, and so it was used to, you know, barter for all sorts of things. And luckily, I still have mine, and I think I told this story before. But when I went to the Gulf War, my mom, in an attempt, my sainted mother, in an attempt to try to not think about where her son was, decided to take all my cards. She then divided them up by teams, and then she alphabetized them within each team, and then she bought these books with these little sleeves, and she organized all of my baseball and football cards. And so now it becomes not just a testimony of my childhood, but it also becomes a testimony of my mom and, what she did to kind of help her get through a tough time. And so it's one of those things where it means a lot as a collection because it transcends the origin of what they were used for and why we thought they were important in the first place. It becomes a much bigger deal.
Certainly. I mean, the nostalgia of these cards is why they're so important, not only to the people who collect them, but to those who are interested in purchasing them for later. And so it was funny you brought up a Franco Harris card, and
Oh,
I have in
Look at that.
front of me a Topps chewing gum
yeah.
card from 1979 that has Franco Harris and his yards, and Larry Anderson and his kickoff return yards, and then L.C. Greenwood and Tony Dungy
Oh,
uh,
wow. What a great
on
group of
defense
players.
with quarterback sacks and interceptions. So again, it's always been something that you could carry around very easily, which
Yeah.
is why they're so bent and things are spilled on them and fingerprints of all types of whatever is all across them. But again, like you said, it's a part of our youth and our um, the times that we've shared with all the memories that associated with just owning cards and sharing them with our friends and compadres. Um, it's just a good thing.
Those cards are petri dishes of our childhood. There's God knows what's on those things,
Oh, man.
glazed donut remnants and whatever.
Oh, who knows? Yeah. Well, for some
But
reason,
our sense
yeah,
of collection though doesn't
yeah,
stick just with sports. I mean,
right.
what did the collection of cars, did that lead you to other collections, or did everything happen for its own reason? Steve, how about with you?
Well, football, I held on to them, and so I still have all those. I put them. You mentioned Franco Harris. I have a rookie card from him, and so those things start to become pretty nice,
Mm,
and so you hold on to it. So I always would display a few. Now I have like about well three, actually four cases of these, that I think are the more valuable, and but I always held on to them. And I guess there were two other things that I would call collections that weren't intended to be collections starting out. I guess you always fall into these things, but one would be books, as you see behind, and that bookcase, there's often books behind those books, and then there are boxes of other books, but I never get rid of books, for any reason. And so I guess I have this vision at some point of being able to afford a complete library or something and wrap around. So, but they're it's always really personal with me. I mean, I'm not one to treat a book like it's in a museum, So I turn the corners when I read it. I write on them all the time. So they're lived in. I think that's important. So that would be one. So a second, I guess, and then the third would be records, and LPs from and I inherited some, from my dad, from my sister, and then I purchased a lot of those. And those, you had money and you would spend it on records, And so again, when it just happens, I'm a little older, and so the time I was buying records was the 1970s and 80s. But I have a lot of these, original Beatles records and all these things that are. It's great to play them, not treat them like a museum, because then we have such a subtle memory that you can hear every crack and every little detail, and it does bring you back. So that's, to me, it's another connection, and I think that is important, to connect to who you are, because it's so easy to forget, as you're older, that other person that you were.
How about for you, Alex? I mean, was it just cards, or did you go off in different directions with other things as well?
No, I think it just evolved into your interest, just like the sports was our original interest. I think you start talking about movies and music, and so I definitely went through my era of VHS and DVDs
Mhm.
and CDs, but funny enough, I kind of migrated back to records myself.
Hmm.
Now I will say that my record player is like a Sony record player with a Bluetooth capable Bluetooth capabilities. So I'm listening to it at a very, very high level. It's not like it's all the sounds being produced from one box. But that scratch of the record before the song plays and all of that, the crackle that goes within and between songs as they end and as they, and, even during the songs, that sound is a sound that once it goes away, once we totally get away from records, you can never reproduce.
Mhm.
And so holding on to some of that nostalgia, too, is something that I'm interested in, and I like. And like Stephen said, I also have a number of books myself, and I can't think of ways or reasons to get rid of them either. So I've run out of a lot of different practical spaces for it, and I guess I'm like you, Stephen, where I think I'm gonna build a library with a rolling ladder that I can climb up
That's
and
it.
down
The vision.
and find all these different things, right? But no, I do like records. I have quite a few that I've borrowed from my parents and never returned, and then I have a few that I've went out and purchased because I knew that they would be looking for them after a while, and that kind of got me into. My parents grew up with records and having a big thing with music, so I kind of inherited that naturally. And I'm a fan of good music, and Man, it was good music made during the records era. Um, so yeah.
It's interesting that I wonder, and I think about my collections, like Steve, it was either the sports cards was the first one, and then like you said, Alex, as you mature, you start getting involved in other things. Then it became comic books, and then later books become the objective, and then always it's been albums. My father had a bunch of 78 records that were basically old jazz and blues records, and so I would get those, and then I'd add to it with the 33 and a halves and thirds rather, and then those become my part of the collection, and then it just kind of builds organically from there. And I think about what it is that collections, why they're important, and we kind of talked about it, in these first 15 minutes or so, but also just the idea of what we gain from it. And it's just the idea of settling down to appreciate something, settling down enough to consider the value of something, to consider the worth of something. And it's not like a one glance and, oh, that's expensive, that's worth something, or that's not worth something. It usually requires some inspection. It usually requires some knowledge. And it becomes the first thing that as kids, I think we start to appreciate for its own sake. And it's something that skill then transmits into other things as we get older and our tastes become more refined and things of that nature. I'm wondering if you see it the same way. Do you see it as, is there something else that you think that we gain from collections? Steve or Alex, whichever, whoever.
I'm a little troubled by the digital conversation, and Alex mentions social media and sports.
Mm,
But I happen to have another window open to the left of me right now, and it's Spotify. And and so listening, the way that we listen to music now has taken the idea of collecting, and now this is all at our fingertips. I can get any performance of anything
mm,
immediately. And so and so technology now, there's no object at all. I mean, collecting CDs, I think we all did that, and now they're in a box. I'm not
right.
going to play them. It's what's easier, and so you have all the sports statistics and images available on the internet or whatever. um, so one by one, these collections have sort of become obsolete because initially we did them, we collected because we would use them. We would look at those cards, we would play the music and so forth. So it's sort of a throwback. I was wondering if, I was thinking, what would I collect now? If I were to start from scratch, it would probably be, again, something that I would consume, maybe whiskey. That, I mean, it's
That's a good
appealing,
one.
not just because it's whiskey, but to have, something that is real and not just a display, but that you will eventually empty it out, which is the beauty, I think, of playing a record, is you wear those out and it's your life being played, and there's something to that. But the digital has kind of cleaned up you know, so much, that we're definitely losing something. So maybe I think it is a human tendency to hoard things, and but I haven't really thought about it in terms of what we're losing now.
I like the idea of thinking about what would we collect today if we were
Hmm?
to continue on with this same ideology, right?
Yeah.
And and with all that we lose with technology, we gain a lot, right? We gain
Mhm.
the ability to quickly access things that would take a long time to to grab or to obtain. When you think about going to a place where they have a DJ, no longer do you see crates and crates of records
Mm.
being hauled in and funneled through as they change songs. They're doing it all on a mixer that pulls from the internet and have access to all those songs at the speed of a click. But I guess if I were to just think about it from the standpoint of this question, I'd probably collect more on the line of what you're saying, Stephen, with the experience. I'd collect passport stamps,
Yeah.
things that you could then relate back to a feeling or an experience or an awakening, if you will, based off of where you've gone and what you were able to experience during that particular, you know, travel or trip. So passport stamps would be something just to see what parts of the world you can you could visit and experience their cultures, etc. And I know Ross is big on that anyway. He likes to check off different parts of the world and I'm sure his passport has quite a few stamps on it. But if you think about it just from the standpoint of how we've viewed things like cards and other collectibles, that is something too that even though it seems like it's one thing, it brings back a feeling from the experience.
One of the things I was thinking about, and to kind of latch onto what both of y'all said, there is something there's a I don't want to say the word danger because that seems melodramatic, but I mean there seems to be a problem with the desire to perfect things or to sanitize things or to streamline things. And that goes for experiences, that goes for things that we collect. I've used this quote before, but the loneliest monk, the famous jazz pianist, talked about the fact that perfection was not interesting, and it certainly shouldn't be a goal. And so you think about the CDs, and you think about Spotify, and you think about all these other things that gives us these crystal clear, pristine versions of songs, and yet they don't strike the way they used to. And maybe it's just because we grew up at a time when the music sounded different, and maybe there's no difference between us and the kids today except for that. But for me, I I can't help but think that there is something to the idea that we can outsmart ourselves, that we can outfox ourselves as far as our technology and our experiences and what have you. And even the collection of stamps in a passport. It represents real life experiences. It doesn't represent a kind of a curated experience. It doesn't represent a kind of inauthentic or virtual experience. It's a real experience. Those stamps represent stories. They represent conversations. They represent things that will stick with us for the rest of our lives. And all these things, as Steve's mentioned, it's about using them. It's not about putting them on a shelf and say, "Look how nice that looks." You know, if our listeners could see the image behind Steve, is a crap load of books behind Steve. But I also know that Steve has cracked open every single one of those. There's not a single one of those books behind him whose binding is not creased
Mhm.
by repeated reading. And there's something wonderful about that.
Well, I can think of one other is in a lot of ways even more personal, and it's music, and I mean sheet music. And
Mm.
for classical music, we're talking about these volumes of Bach, Beethoven, all of these things, and you know, there are so many. I mean, a lot of those are in boxes, a lot of them are accessible because I practice them. But there's something today where musicians, when if you ever watch a concert, a classical concert, the younger musicians have everything on a tablet, a big tablet, and they touch it when they turn the page. So it's very
Mm.
fast. You're playing your violin, you touch it. And if you're doing a solo, there's a foot pedal. And so you push on that and it changes, but it's digital. And what I'm playing there, say with Beethoven sonatas, piano solos, it has fingerings, that I've written in over the years, but it also has notes written by hand by my piano teachers over the years. So it's kind of like this palimpsest, this one layer on top of another layer. So I can see when my teacher from when I was in seventh grade, told me to relax my wrist and do these, play through this phrase, but it's all there. And so it kind of, and so the concept of moving over and digitizing does something to that history and the meaning of it. Um, so what I bought for myself for Christmas, and we kind of buy our own gifts and put somebody else's name on it, is a piano lamp. Because I was going through that discussion. Should I and go digital because it's so easy, and you can write fingerings on it. But I went and got a nice piano lamp because my eyes are starting to fail me, and I can't see those numbers things. But yeah, so the more I like this conversation because the tendency to collect things. I'll keep going. Another thing is I have a recipe box from my mother. Probably my most prized possession, all these recipes. And occasionally we'll use parts of them, but what we should be doing is cooking them and making that a thing. And so the idea of something being on a shelf, um, that would be a pretty good resolution if you're going to do a real resolution, not about losing weight or something, but to get real with some of those things that are sitting on the shelf that are really valuable.
I think we all agree that collecting for the sake of collecting
Mhm.
is not our interest.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are some people who that's their thing. They want to have it just to say that they have it. And but it sounds strikingly clear that that's not who we are as a collective. It seems that we would value more the usability of the things that we collect, the experiences that comes from using those things that we collect, and just the overall feeling that's associated with the owning things that we have placed value on.
Mhm.
It's interesting you brought up the idea of food and recipes,
Mhm.
because my mother passed away, like 4 years ago, and I think one of the things that I was able to get, my sister sent it to me, was one, not just a collection of recipes that she had, but she also got it was also the things that made them special is that they were in my mother's own writing.
Yeah. That's
And so for me, you know, I'll go ahead and be honest. My mother was not the best cook around. Jewish cooking typically is void of all seasoning and taste, but still, I mean, she had some pretty interesting recipes and things that kind of create memories that harken back to earlier days. And so making them and trying to relive them and seeing my mom's handwriting again, all that is tied into it's tied into family history. It's also tied into cultural history. It's also tied into, so many things that kind of represent who we are as people. And so for me, it can get into some pretty emotional, you know, areas, but it's also just about being able to continue traditions, continue ideas, continue things that have always been a part of our lives and now become a part of my daughter's life.
becomes highly philosophical here, Miller. Keeping the continuity um, going. And
Mm.
um, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the present. Um, the, I think this whole conversation feeds in with the idea of the old school and our philosophy is to look at things, and like there are some good reasons, for that. But the quote is the past is a great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. But that connection we sure need, and I think as we get older, we we want that, and we don't have a lot from our deceased parents,
Mhm.
and so the handwriting on a recipe is pretty meaningful. We don't have recordings, at least I don't, of my mother. In fact, it was just 25 years that she passed away, and so that's that. If only we had a recording or something from my father. I still have on my phone some messages, which and so those are invaluable. I need to find a great way to back those up. They're just short little call messages, but it's the same thing, a way to connect you to
Mhm.
your past in a real way.
Yeah, more and more I'm seeing commercials or advertising for ways that you can digitalize your
Huh.
photos
Yeah,
and VHS tapes and
yeah.
and and even film that predate VHS,
Oh, that's great.
and it made sense to me when I was looking at them because we no longer even have DVD players. Like you can't. If
Right.
someone handed you a DVD, you wouldn't even know or have any means of being able to play it. But this one particular company advertised that it could take all of your pictures and or movies, et cetera, and create almost a Netflix like platform for
Oh,
you
wow.
to uh to be able to go and intentionally view certain things and certain pictures. And I think to your point, uh just being very thoughtful about how important those things are to us now.
Hmm.
We owe it to our future generations to make sure that we hand them things that whether you're there or not, they'll be able to experience the essence of you and during your time on this planet. So
Yeah.
it does make you a little bit, like you said, more nostalgic when you think about your own parents and your own
Right.
grandparents and things of that nature, and how few of those recordings or photos that we have of them in comparison to today, where
Yeah.
you can take 100 photos in a day and upload them as soon as you take the picture.
Yeah.
Um, um, that we preserve some of that stuff in a way that can be passed down, so that years from now, people will be able to see their great great grandfather and have even more than stories about him, but have actual footage
Mm.
of them and some of the ways and that they impacted their family.
So, Ross, we need to do this by video. I mean, we've done over 140 episodes. If only my parents had been podcasting, and get to hear all this. And I mean, even, thinking my kids, your kids, Ross, our kids, Alex, listening to this later, and so it might be really, really valuable, or they could think we were really dorky and they'd be embarrassed, but they'd probably really find it important.
It is. It's a little bit like talking into the void sometimes,
Hmm.
because it's nothing that actually exists.
Hmm.
It's something that's taking up space on some sort of computer somewhere else. The photo thing, yeah, the notion of preserving photos to me is the thing that I most struggle with as somebody who typically tends to stick to kind of the older way. I have photo albums and I've maintained photo albums since I started taking pictures when I was in military,
He's a
and
really
so I
great
have
photographer, Ross.
70. Thank you. I have 70 albums, and every time I go someplace, I don't take pictures unless I print them. And so the photos I take, I print, and so it takes up physical space, but it's also something tangible. I get that, with the record, it's something tangible. The sounds that you hear is something tangible. I do I do understand that they're also susceptible. The fact that I have 70 photo albums and that I got a tinderbox in basically in my closet right now. I mean, this whole place could go up, and all that would be gone. And so I get the risk of that, but I also understand the desire to want to preserve, to protect, to keep for future generations something that represents what life used to be like,
Hmm.
where people come from, who were their great grandparents, who were the first people to show up, and they all took pictures as soon as they had the money to take pictures, if not by their own camera, but they went to a photography store and got a picture taken, what have you. And it becomes a nice gateway for the newer generations to have some inkling about what life was like for their family 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
So what do we do with this here, Miller? We left education entirely, and we may have had one of our better conversations we've had. And Alex came in here. We didn't know what we were going to talk about. Ross and I talked for a moment before. Said let's just try something a little different. And there's a lot to this, and I don't even think we need to connect it to education, but it does connect to the old school and what we're losing, and there's some, I think, incredible opportunities now with the digital to capture things long term. But I think that I have a couple more collections left in me.
And it goes to what Alex was talking about. This is also about, and it is educational. It's the passing on of history. It's the passing on of culture. It's the passing on of lived experiences for the benefit of those who did not live that, either thankfully or not. And so, in some ways, this is kind of the real education. It's not the kind that's between four cinder block walls painted pleasant colors for consumption, but it's about a real it's about something real, something that really happened, something that really transpired, had an impact, had a made a difference.
Absolutely, and the ideal of passing things down directly, I think that that adds way more value to it than any other way that information can be transpired or transmitted. Being able to hand down those recipes that you received from your parents, um, you could have heard about the recipe from a third party, or it could be a general recipe that copied from a general recipe book during that time or era. But it means more to see it written in the handwriting of the person that meant so much to you. And so I think, as you stated before, the real essence of old school is to preserve those things that we know are tried and true, and that are good for the soul, and being able to hand down things that are valuable to the people who are handing them down, even if they don't quite understand the significance of it right then. It's something that I think we shouldn't ever lose sight of as a community, as a collective, as mankind.
Technology will no doubt bring some good things, but you can't tell me it's so great that it automatically should replace everything that happened before, that there isn't value in things that happened before. And that's the thing that irks me the most about, people who are kind of obsessed with technology. I get it. I get the good things about it, but you can't tell me it's so great that we can afford to just ignore everything that transpired before. And so maybe that's where we are. Maybe these collections could be a lifeline for future generations to a time that could be in its own way instructive.
I also think that that's why we are watching sports today, tonight, and for years to come, is that there is that continuity from player to player for a lot of teams, and it does
Mhm.
connect us to our youth and who we are, and it's about there are very few things left like that are uninterrupted, relatively similar rules. The games don't change that much. Baseball is probably a better example, and we need some firm ground, for sure.
Well, with all of this stuff,
Yeah,
I mean, this has been a great conversation.
for
It's been,
sure.
you and I have discussed it to some degree, but it's been incredible to hear Alex's thoughts and, what he has done and what he's collected and how he kind of views things because it's for me, it's like just a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation. Again, we can always connect anything that we're talking about back to the essence of learning, which is transmuting information from one to the other. And I think we've learned a lot from each other today, just having these conversations, and hopefully we cherish the things that we talked about in this conversation. I know we started off talking about playing cards and how we learn more about the players a little bit with stats and things of that nature, and we got all the way to the point of talking about technology and how it's replacing a lot of the things that we once held so dear. Ross, I know that you're a huge baseball fan, and you probably still like the umpire making the final say on whether or not that was a strike. You don't want to go to
Yeah.
the video evidence for that. You want to use the eye test and just have a feel for it. In the way that it was done in the 1900s, early 1900s, and so again, there will always be some benefits to technology and what we could do with it. I think as we gain more savvy with technology, I like the ideal of letting it do things that um, allowing it to do things for us that we don't necessarily enjoy the most, so that we can spend that time, as we mentioned earlier, with the people that we care about the most, doing the things that we really truly um, love to do with those people. And so if anything, we want and need technology for ways that allow us to be more old school and be present with the people that we have built a life with, and have selected and curated ourselves to be a part of this experience.
Well, I think we should stop on that. I was thinking, it looks like Ross has paused. Anyway, there he is. And there
Yeah.
was a little pause there. But thank you, Alex. This was incredible. And thanks
He
for
he
being
al-
with
he
us.
almost he almost got us sidetracked onto a whole new episode about ABS and virtual umpires, and so I
I was thinking
refrained
ahead
from.
too. I was also thinking about a song by the Kinks and called the Village Green Preservation Society. Do you know?
Society, yes, yes.
Protecting the old things. And yeah, that's if we could have a theme song, that might be it.
Well,
Well, just another example that the episodes with Alex are some of our best ones, to
Oh
be
yeah,
sure. So
for sure.
I sure appreciate you guys having me, and again, I just wanted to make sure that we know that the technology that we do have access to, we'll use it so that we could have more time doing the things that matters more than scribing word for word everything a teacher said during the lesson. Like, how much love and joy is in your head being down scribing
Yeah.
teacher said this, student said that, as opposed to walking around and really being getting that experience
mm,
as a participant in this particular learning activity. So um, I know that Stephen has a lot of ways that he's gathering data and using technology for his benefit, so that he could take away some of that time and footwork that people who subscribe to his services wouldn't otherwise be spending. And so I don't want to throw technology away to that degree, because we definitely
no.
want to use it for our benefit for the future. Because it's here whether we want it or not. That it's the calculator of all calculators, AI, and all of the things that it does. It's never getting put back in the box. But at the same time, I think it's fitting that the title of of you all's um, programming is the old school, and there should be some pushback and some old school advocating, or else then you're changing the essence of who you are. So I've enjoyed this conversation, and I'm old school in a lot of ways too, as you all can see.
Well, that's why we do connect for sure.
If we ever do a commercial, I think we just found the script for the first one. Is what Alex just said. So with that, we shall say adieu. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode coming up very, very soon on your favorite platform for podcasts. With this, shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller. Thanks again, Alex.
I appreciate you guys.